Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew. I'm the head of communications for Steemit. And today on this episode of the Steemit Podcast, I'm here with Erik Johnson, co-creator of Cash the Game. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, the game that he's building, what makes it so exciting and special. And then we're probably going to talk a little bit about why they're choosing to build their game on Steem. Hey, Erik.
Hey, thank you for having me here. So let's just jump right into what Cash is, and then I'll talk a little bit about our motivations for building the game and who we are, who I am. So Cash is a social cryptocurrency trading game, and it's set in an 8-bit dystopian cyberpunk universe. So really the goal of this game is to start as a nobody in the cyberpunk universe. You're dwelling in a tent, and your goal is to really work your way to the top. And what the top means is, rich with crypto and owning the most coveted real estate in the game, which is your own cryptocurrency exchange, which you could do. The game's powered by Steem blockchain, although there's some interactivity with other chains, including Ethereum, and I can dive into that a little more later. Some cool things about the Cash universe is you earn crypto just for playing, and you basically trade these in-game cryptos to earn your fortune. These in-game cryptos are also on the Steem blockchain. So you actually, they're actually minted to a real blockchain, and you own them. And the social part is you can affiliate yourself with various groups in the game. Some other things you could do are chat, peer-to-peer trade, and you can even attempt to hack other players. So there's a lot of ways to play the game, and one of the cool things is it's going to be free to play, available on web, iOS, and Android, and we're targeting the release of the game in fall. But right now you can go to cash.gg, and I want to mention that's cash as in like a store, so CACHE.gg, and pre-register just by adding your email address. In return, you'll get a free random in-game item. So you just head there, put in your email address, and you'll get items like Ghost Jacket, or I think we're providing some deck jacks, which are, as I mentioned, the way to hack people is to use that item. So a lot of cool free items if you just head there now and get signed up. So that's Cash. I also could talk a little bit about our motivations for Cash and things like that.
That would be great, but could you maybe start by talking about maybe your background and the background of the team, just so that we can get a sense of who's behind this project? I think that's really important with crypto-related projects, is that because of the anonymity, the decentralization, that the team behind these projects is especially important.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to hide behind a pseudonym like Satoshi by any chance or anything. And actually, in our backstory, we have a mysterious character as well. But anyways, so Cash is built. I'm a co-creator of Cash, and I'm a long-time web and mobile developer by trade. And the other co-creator, his name is Roscoe LaMontagne, and Roscoe's a professional multimedia artist. So he's got installations in places like MIT, and ultimately though, we're really just huge cryptocurrency enthusiasts and longtime gamers across all sorts of platforms. So really the origin of our idea was us kind of throwing out some ideas of projects that we could try out. And we kicked off our idea at the 2018 ETHDenver hackathon, which ended up being like the largest blockchain hackathon in terms of participation. And Cash, the game, ended up winning an overall reward. So really this idea comes from us being in the cryptocurrency space and following it as fans and enthusiasts. And what we saw in the crypto space, as far as, in the sort of the media or the social media of it, was the drama of the exchanges, the markets, the price swings, the mystery, as we mentioned, the Satoshis of the world. And so we really wanted to create a world and a game for players that like cranked up that idea, like to the max, to the 11, so to speak. And, but also like make it a little bit lower risk, a lot more social and a lot more fun. So obviously, it's free to play, and you when an exchange crashes or is hacked, you don't lose your family fortune.
It's super meta, right? The idea
Yeah.
is basically like, we worked so hard to build up these cryptocurrencies and give them value, but the whole point of cash is kind of to fight for currencies that aren't really valuable in a way or something. Can you correct me?
No, yeah, I think it's like, I think you're right about the meta. It's like, the idea is like, as we move towards a more and more like layers of meta, cryptocurrencies, and the world of cryptocurrencies itself was sort of a meta space. But ultimately the community and the people that around it that were using it made it real. And so we just kind of jumped on that idea. It's like, well, why don't we, there's no technical limitation now to sort of making it mixed reality. And by that, I just mean, okay, if normal money is real, now cryptocurrency is real, can we then make a game or a world that is sort of blending the real and the fake, or I don't even want to call it the fake, but the imaginary, and in a way that is very, like you said, mind-blowing. It's just, there ceases to be that barrier, and I think that barrier is just coming down every day. And we have a 10-year goal of, we're starting with a very simple game. Like you said, it's 8-bit. It's got a trading dynamic that is sort of based on the original game Drug Wars, which was a DOS game, or even a TI calculator game. A lot of people know it that way. And then can we, in 10 years, like jump from that to, a full virtual reality world where people can enter the game and travel around and travel to these exchanges in this universe. So that's really it. You really nailed it with the whole meta thing. And we're trying to bring the metaverse to reality.
Is there a
through
narrative
this world.
structure to the game?
There is. And the thing is, it's open-ended enough that it's a social game, whereas anytime you travel to exchange, there's other players. But ultimately, the narrative is that you are always trying to basically trade cryptocurrencies and essentially gain the highest score. Your highest score is basically like an amount of what we call fiat coin. So fiat coin would just be like US dollars, although in the game, US dollars don't exist anymore. Cryptocurrencies have really usurped the world in a way that is sort of dystopian, and that's a joke. Not fully a joke against big tech companies, but ultimately that we want to basically foster this idea that we want crypto to ultimately bring freedom. So it's more about the people in the community fighting against sort of a tyranny of big companies that are trying to control everything.
So what do you think is going to get people the most excited about playing your game? When you're talking to Steem users, right? We've got 1 million plus users, lots of whom are playing games. One of those games is actually Drug Wars, which
Yep.
is now the biggest blockchain game on the planet. But you're going after something that I think is significantly different. So what will you be saying to those users that's going to get them fired up and eager to play your game?
Sure. Yeah. There's two things. I mean, I think is we have we're building a lot of features that foster community inside the game. So there's about 20 different affiliations in the game that you can choose right off the bat. And you can be a part of that community instantly. You can trade with other players. So community is a huge thing. And then honestly, because it's this cyberpunk universe, because it's sort of open-ended, there's really an opportunity to be yourself and grow and be rewarded with it, and rewarded just for your experience. So you're able to basically collect in-game items in crypto, which is a big thing. And obviously, so many games nowadays are powered by basically collectors, collectible card games like Steam Monsters, or Crypto Kitties was like the Atari version of some ideas on the blockchain, where it's like, I'm going to own this avatar, or I'm going to own this item, or I'm going to own this let's say token, and it's mine. I own it on the blockchain, and I can trade it. And what we're doing is fostering basically a platform for people to play. Obviously, there's an objective of getting the most, but we want to foster a platform that allows players to play in a number of ways, ultimately allowing more creativity. So you can be yourself, you can play the way you want, and we feel like, we're going to create a dynamic that is basically almost out of our control, right? We're excited to create this universe and let people do what they want inside of it, basically.
I think that's really interesting, and especially because it validates one of the big projects that we're working on right now, which is our communities feature, which is going to be implemented in a piece of software called HiveMind. I'm sure you're well aware of it. A lot of people don't really, I think, understand why we think this is such a big deal. They think it's about having sub-communities on Steemit.com, which it is, but it's actually about adding functionalities to the Steem database that we think the widest array of developers want and need to power their applications. And I think that plays out in your app. Like, your app is an especially good example of why that is. It sounds like a very different thing from Steemit.com, but at the end of the day, it really winds up coming down to communities. But I'm sure we'll get into some of those details later when we dive into the maybe more technical aspects of the game. I wanted to go back to something you said. You guys won ETHDenver. Would you mind talking a little bit about what that experience of working with Ethereum was like, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and maybe, I assume, how that led you to Steem as a solution?
Sure, absolutely. So obviously we kicked off in 2018 at ETHDenver, so February 2018. We won an overall award. Next steps for us was to really, we built, as you might know, or maybe you don't, Ethereum is a blockchain that's powered by something called smart contracts. And so smart contracts basically allow you to publish code on the blockchain, and then, the miners or basically run that code for you, and then they publish the results to the blockchain. So, one of the couple of use cases that are obvious or emerged from that was tokens. So Cash originally our idea was to make Cash a coin operated game. So you can publish a smart contract called the ERC20 contract, which would allow you to create, in this case, we created a Cash token, which powered the game. And the other idea that we had, that we ultimately used Ethereum for, or smart contracts for, was avatars. So when you created it, when you started the game, you could create an unlimited amount of avatars, and we would use an ERC721 token, which is a non-fungible token, which just means, okay, I can publish a set of unique data to this contract, and then I own that, and that unique data is your avatar. So those were really cool. Like, oh wow, this is really cool. We can, we're giving something that's, I think, ultimately vital to players, and the fact that in today's world, we are rapidly moving towards a game format that is, free to play, and ultimately the business models of those games are in-game items, right? So the conundrum that players have typically had is, okay, I'm going to buy a bunch of items, or I'm going to get a bunch of achievements. I'm going to buy a bunch of items, and I'm going to have all these things. But ultimately, I have no way to own them. They are only on a centralized server. And if that server gets hacked, or that company folds, or a number of things happen, well, I am SOL is the acronym. I'm out of luck, let's say, so to speak. So that for us was like, okay, that's a great use case for the blockchain, and we want to use, Ethereum was a natural fit because it was the first. They had smart contracts. That was kind of in the Ethereum white paper, so to speak. It was the original idea, and we used that for a while. We did a beta, or a small beta of about 200 people that were kind of insiders that were, or really just interested in playing the game. And we were able to collect a lot of feedback, and ultimately there was some things I'll talk about that led us ultimately to rethink some of our assumptions, and also ultimately move some of our, let's say, some of our infrastructure away from Ethereum. So I can get into that too as well. So ultimately, with Ethereum, there was some downsides, and we were able to work with the Ethereum blockchain a number of ways to overcome those, but ultimately they were stifling, and really it came down to a few major things. Now, I think it's really important to state that in today's world, the two things you want to be to compete really as a product are really fast and free. Now, that might not be true in every single space, but in the gaming space, we are competing with attention, and some of the problems with Ethereum right off the bat were mining fees. So in order to make a transaction, like I said, our game was originally coin operated, right? So we had these coins that you could buy, and you not only would you pay for those tokens, they were very inexpensive, but you'd also have to pay a mining fee for that transaction on top of that. And that mining fee is variable, meaning it could be, less than 1 cent. Or what happened in the summer of 2018 was because of some spamming that was going on with a certain application, mining fees were up to $20 or $30. So just off the bat, I mean, imagine trying to play a game that takes about 15 minutes to play per game and having to play $30. Nobody's going to do that. So that was immediately a huge concern for us, and really was a bad assumption that we could treat this as something that was as free and as possible. The other side of that is that mining transactions take time. So, the blocks aren't instant. So therefore, if we wanted to make sure that you had paid to play cash, we'd have to basically verify that in 20 or 30 seconds, sometimes longer. So fast and free, those sort of that as a ideal was sort of hard to get around. There are some other user experience things that Cash interacted with the normal wallets, the Ethereum wallets. And so you have something like MetaMask, which is okay, but it's buggy and sort of slow, and it's sort of a browser extension. And on the mobile side, you had a variety of different sort of mobile wallets that, some were pretty cool. Like Trust is very good, and I really respect what they've done. But again, it's hard to want someone to just jump in and play for free when they have to, set up an in-game, a browser extension or download another app and then go to a URL. So we and that's not all on the Ethereum side. That's on a user experience side as well. So we're really trying to focus on making Cash have an amazing user experience, and Steem actually helps us do that. So I can also get into kind of how we're doing that, or any sort of.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things. I'm guessing that does that mean that you're planning on using Steem Connect? Because we have Keychain on Steem, which is similar to MetaMask for Ethereum, and Keychain is great. But one of the things we've been thinking about at Steemit, because we're in charge of ensuring that the most used Steem app has as great a user experience as possible, when we look at browser extensions like obviously we think fast and free are important too. We built them into the base layer of our protocol. And of course we don't charge for Steemit.com. But when analyzing the situation of managing keys, one of the projects we helped develop was Steem Connect. And that was precisely for that reason, that we don't think that the majority of users are can be expected to download an application to use
Right.
another application. So are you planning on using Steem Connect?
Absolutely. We're our first go-to right now for authentication with Steem users is Steem Connect. Ultimately, we'd like to we're throwing around the idea of sort of we'll see how far we can go and how easy we can make it to use Steem Connect. But ultimately, we've thrown around the idea of integrating our own wallet, our own Steem wallet into the game just to make it as seamless as possible. We think right now, our assumption is that we're provided with the tools to use Steem Connect in a way that will be very seamless and very easy for the users to basically get connected with their Steem account.
Yeah, well, the great thing is that there are all these tools that are just ready for you to use outside of the box. And then as you're using it, as you're developing the game, you can either help make those tools better or implement your own solutions. We certainly don't have any problem with that.
Right.
As your game gets more mature, you want more custom tailored solutions for your users if the solutions that already exist aren't helping you out. So you talked about using Ethereum, the smart contracts that you had on Ethereum. Were there any problems moving from a smart contract platform to Steem, which does not technically have smart contracts in the sense that you can't add code to Steem? The smart contracts are all embedded in consensus and can only be changed through hard forks. So was this a problem moving to a protocol that doesn't allow for smart contracts?
No, ultimately, we always had Cash always had basically a game server, and the reason for that is that we want the game to move fast. So we've kind of come up with the idea that Ethereum, you'll have your items. Your items can be exported to the Steem blockchain as transactions, which is a very, we'll basically eventually, our goal and our vision is to build a way of, I wouldn't say pure smart contracting, but a standardized way to sort of represent those items that are on the Steem blockchain as transactions. And then the other side is that we've kind of also retained the Ethereum smart contracts. So you could think of the smart contracts. So you have your in-game items, you have your avatars, you have your tokens. Now think of using the smart contracts in Ethereum as a way to maybe push off your items into cold storage. And by that, I just mean that you can sort of burn your items to the Ethereum blockchain, and then they're removed from the game, and then you can import them back in. We're going to be doing the same with Steem, and hopefully we'll be able to build a platform around how to represent those, and hopefully we can build some sort of unified marketplace in the future as well. So basically, you bring you can import and export your items into the game, play the game at full speed, and move your items around in that universe. But you can also, if you choose to, move them into these various blockchains for storage.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're leveraging something we're calling soft consensus, where you're taking the code that was effectively smart contracts on Ethereum, you're storing it on Steem so that everybody can audit the code, so that
Right.
you're posting non-fungible tokens, fungible tokens, the code that's running the game to the Steem blockchain, but then you're running it on your servers so that you can get that user experience. And
Right.
if people believe in smart contracts and their importance, you're reconciling that code onto Ethereum.
Right.
I think it will be the case that eventually people will realize that they're not getting much value out of having the code stored and executed on a blockchain. And what they really want is their data, their important code, their assets stored on a blockchain in a way that can be validated, in a way that can ensure that ownership of those assets is being transferred back and forth, that they can get all of that on Steem. But the beauty is that you don't have to choose, that you can integrate both protocols and you can let the users decide. Am I about right with that?
You're nailing it. You're totally nailing it. And that's ultimately, when you're knee deep in the development of this and you're really thinking about it all the time, executing the code isn't as important as having, you want ownership of your items ultimately. That's what we feel like is an important value add of the blockchain, and we're going to give you that functionality fully. But the logic that gets you there is not as important as in this case. And there's so many transactions that ultimately don't matter. So like, I think there's a Mitch Hedberg joke. He makes a joke about receipts, right? You go to a store and you want to buy a donut. It's like 40 cents or something. I don't need that receipt. I just don't need it. It's fine. I have the donut, right? It's mine. I own it, but I don't need the receipt for that donut. If there's a problem, we'll just talk about it or whatever. Like it's something that will be thrown away. And so a lot of inter-game transactions, while they're recorded in our database and they're recorded to the Steem blockchain, and you can certainly look at them there, they're not what you're going to want ultimately. What you want is that donut. That donut is now yours. And so that's what we're providing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And I love Mitch Hedberg. And so I like the reference. I think in the space, we've kind of lost sight of what we were shooting for, which was openness, transparency, digital ownership. When Bitcoin launched and eventually was gaining traction, and for years, Bitcoin went unchallenged. What was so exciting about that, and people openly expressed it, was that you can do anything with a decentralized, open, transparent ledger. You can do anything with them. You can build all these apps. And what Vitalik tapped into was that it was still really hard to do that for various reasons. And so his solution was developing a programming language effectively for that ledger. Great idea, worth exploring, still going to add tremendous value in the future. But this idea that it's the perfect solution to every problem, as opposed to a good solution for a tiny number of problems, actually, like a tiny number of really difficult problems. Like granted, especially when you're talking about B2B, I think that's where smart contracts are going to produce the most value.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. But when you're talking about the stuff that we're talking about, openness, transparency, digital ownership, you can get all of that with a stupid ledger. And then what you really want is fast and feeless. So it's good to see that that's not totally off base. But that being said, you were on Ethereum, you were doing all this work in smart contracts. You talked about the importance of speed and feelessness. So I was wondering if you might explain whether you considered migrating to EOS, which is similar in many ways to Ethereum. It's kind of a hybrid between Steem and Ethereum. We don't think that means it's better, but perhaps you could explain whether you looked at EOS and why you made the decisions you did with respect to that protocol.
Yeah, I think EOS is a very impressive, like you said, hybrid between something like Steem and something like Ethereum. I think further down our roadmap, we'll probably do a similar type of thing with Ethereum, where if you want your item to be on the EOS blockchain, you'll have that option. Ultimately, I think there's a slight component, or there's a major component that is slightly missing, and why, ultimately why we made our decision to kind of move further towards Steem. And that was the overarching community aspect. And obviously that starts with Steemit, but it's really baked into Steem. And I mean, the Steem tagline is powering communities and opportunities. And all of my interactions with the Steem community have been very community oriented. So it's not that I haven't, we looked at, I think EOS on a technical merits are very high, and they do have a community similar to Ethereum, where, they're doing a lot of talks, and they're doing a lot of conferences and meetups. And so we definitely want to, one of the cool things is we can partner with, we can make it an option to basically use those chains as the demand is there. But for us, the decision to go to Steem is ultimately, partially about technology, but partially about community.
I do think that there is something that kind of gets lost when it comes to the discussion of the community, because it ties back into the technology and the simplicity of the technology. The community is only there because there are developers developing apps that they love using on it. So the question kind of has to be, well, what's up with this community? Developers had smart contracts in Ethereum. EOS is bringing their own twist to it. But I would suggest that there's still something missing from EOS, which is why I think that we will continue to outpace their growth in terms of community, which is that we focus on integrating the smart contracts into Steem that developers really want in a protocol. When people were coming to us and asking us to add smart contracts to Steem, we would always ask them, what do you want to do with your app that requires smart contracts on Steem? No matter what they said to us, we basically always had the same response. Internally, we would look at the situation, and our blockchain developers would say, they can do all of those things on Steem using the existing smart contracts and then custom JSON ops, inserting code in JavaScript into custom JSON ops and using that to add that additional layer of functionality to their app. And that's what we're now calling soft consensus. And that is critical for offering a great freemium user experience, because we have to bound the number of smart contracts that are executed on chain in order to ensure that the average user can do all the transactions that they want to do. Because as soon as you unbound it, as soon as you start allowing developers to run any kind of crazy smart contract that they want on the same platform, you're going to start having costs spiral out of control, be extremely volatile, and somebody's going to have to eat that cost, whether it's the gas fees on Ethereum or the costs of RAM and CPU on EOS. And so Steem's simplicity is really a feature, not a bug, and is critical for sustaining the type of transactions and interactions that are required in order to fuel a large and rapidly growing community. Does that make sense? Am I way off base?
No, you are totally on base in this sense of there are things that we can also do because of the openness. If as long as you start to accept that the layer is a soft consensus layer, that are much, you basically get a speed of iteration. You get an openness as well. To basically be able to develop features in the way you want. Solidity is a decent language. It's okay, but you're ultimately bound to the constructs of not only that language, but the sort of the way that you have to basically build smart contracts. So you don't. It's a lot. You don't have the speed of iteration. You don't have the ability to. You're not as flexible and you're not as agile in the context of Ethereum smart contracting too, as you can be with Steem. And, you're also like you said, you're kind of using, JSON, and you can kind of use the language of your choice if you want to build a library around that to basically do what you need to do, which obviously provides you with massive development efficiency or productivity. You don't have to basically have this whole different context with Solidity. You don't have to, you have test networks, which are nice, but you don't have to, if you publish a smart contract in the Ethereum context, you better be sure that, it's very, very well tested, because you're going to, you're going to be running into problems if it's not. And we've seen that with, the completely immutable nature of smart contracts, is that there's just been issues with people not being able to fully audit their code and seeing the consequences of that. So, I think that's something you can overcome. And I think there's a benefit to immutability, which we want to provide as another layer in our game. But ultimately, when we want a lot of transactions to happen fast, and we want to be able to publish them in the way that we want to publish them, that's where Steem comes in.
Yeah, and I would be remiss were I not to mention the fact that there are at least one, maybe two or more projects on Steem now that are bringing smart contract-like functionality. I don't know if you've looked into them. One, I think, is called Stratos. Another is called Scott, but or Steem Engine. Steem Engine and Stratos might be the same thing. Have you looked into those, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so we plan on using Steem Engine for our token side. So as I mentioned, there's you trade in-game cryptocurrencies. There's 10 in the game currently. And so each one of those is going to be a token. If you know anything about Ethereum, in the Ethereum context, they'd be like ERC20s or fungible tokens. I think the Steem Engine project was created, and correct me if I'm wrong, mostly, at least partially, by Matt Rosen of Steem Monsters.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I spoke with him, and and he's been a huge liaison, and wonderful help to us. And so anyways, I was talking to him about, okay, we have different use cases. We have items, but we also have tokens, and tokens ultimately fit the use case of Steem Engine, where we can produce these tokens. We can set, in this case, we'll be minting them on demand, but you can set like a, what do you want to call it? The currency amount, the amount in the pool. And you can do pretty much all the things you can do with ERC20s on Steem Engine. So that's definitely a platform it's pretty developer friendly, and also sort of, again, Steem Engine sort of taking that ERC20 concept, which was a Ethereum smart contracting concept, and moved it into the Steem realm, and given a platform and given a structure to be able to do that. So that's really cool. And so that's how we're planning on kicking off the token side of Cash.
This is the series is called Decentralized Entrepreneurship and Marketing. So for any entrepreneurs, marketers, people looking to get into the space, you have a development background, you're building this business. What is the most important lesson you've learned about building a business in this space?
Sure. Yeah. And these are kind of together. I think it's an important lesson. It was a little bit of a surprise, but I think the thing you have to realize about this space is that we are really just at the beginning. I think so many people look back to the historical event of, 2017, 2018, and this, the speculation around cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology was massive, and but it's not without historical precedent. And if you talk to OGs, and OGs are really just people that I don't even know what that is. It original gangsters, but anyway, people that have been around the web since the beginning. And, they remember the .com craze. The .com craze was a lot bigger of a craze than cryptocurrency if you look at like market caps and things like that. So I think we're really just at the beginning, and it's, really vital when you're building a product that you not only educate people about the benefits, because they simply don't know. They know they might see it's interesting. There's like someone named Satoshi, there's some benefit. They're not sure exactly what the benefits of using blockchain are and how it benefits them. So you really have to educate people. You have to provide inviting communities to, welcome them as a member. And honestly, I think we're still, we're going to have to ultimately compete in markets with products that have to be as seamless and as easy to use as like the best technology products that are out there right now. So, I think nobody's going to use cryptocurrency. Nobody's going to use blockchain technology if they have to fumble through things for 20 minutes. They're just going to keep using their bank card. So, despite it being cool, and this goes for other things like AI too, despite it being cool, or despite it being, something that's really hot in the speculative market, ultimately, there's a lot of hard work in making it really easy to use and educating people out there why they should be using the technology.
It seems to me like a lot of people in the space, too many people in the space, are focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on the technical solutions that they like, dare I say they're sexy, as opposed to focusing on the things that matter, like it being delivering a fast enough user experience. People want to engage with web applications in real time. They don't want to be nickel and dime through them. You can, as long as it's an open platform that can improve over time, you can solve all the other problems. And when Steem launched, people thought that its lack of smart contracts was going to hold it back. And yet what we've seen is that people develop the solutions. As long as Steem can meet what matters, can satisfy the functions that matter, being fast, being feeless, the smart contracts that matter, the ability to transfer digital ownership, that all leverages smart contracts that are embedded in consensus. They're there for a reason, because those are the things that people need that redundancy for, that decentralization for, that absolute certainty for. That's the receipt they want, not the receipt for the donut, right?
Right, exactly. And that's why we're going that. It's the openness, it's the, the fast and the free. And we feel like too that there's a lot of good technology will come out of just trying to solve our problem, which is to make an awesome game that people can transact in and have fun in. And, we'll build technology on top of Steem that will help people in the future build more technology. But having that playing field and not having so many limitations, like you said, those core, we'll almost call them physical limitations, right? Like speed is a that's a physical thing, and cost obviously is related. It's amount of work. If you have to pay money just to run one line of code, well, the whole universe has, we have you could buy a computer for $100 and it will run lots of lines of code for you. It'll run millions and millions and millions of lines of code after you've bought it for $100. So paying, $1 for running a line of code is insane, really. It just doesn't meet the economic, like we'll call it the economic physics of, you know what I mean? You're just not going to be able to bend that around. And so, we think that Steem is more for, it's just more based on first principles and also consumer principles. People are always going to want things that are fast, and they're always going to want things that are less expensive. And so that's I think a really great choice. And it doesn't matter if you wanted to build your own Steem or your own blockchain. Ultimately, if I was to do that, I would start with those principles.
Yeah, but then you're stuck with the same old problem of having to work in consensus. And we highly recommend that you leave the blockchain, that people leave the blockchain development to us, and get on building amazing
Yeah.
applications like Cash the Game. So what's the last thing you'd like to tell anybody who's watching this? Is it go to cash.gg? I see that behind you, but it's really obscured.
Oh yeah, that's hard to see, but of course, we're going to shout out your first opportunity to get pre-registered with the game. Obviously, go to cash.gg. Again, that's CACHE.gg. All you got to do is just put in an email address. Preferably use your Steam Connect address or whatever you're using for there, but just some way, and then you'll get a free in-game item, and you can connect with us on Steemit at Cashverse, like a universe, but with cash. So that's CACHE verse. Connect with us there. Connect with us on Twitter, again, Cashverse. And also, we're really excited to build on Steem, and really excited to integrate within the community that's fostered on Steemit. So we are going to be community focused, and we're also opportunities focused. And really, ultimately, Cash is going to be a world where you can be yourself, grow, and obviously be rewarded with community, and most importantly, or not last but not least, crypto. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the Steemit podcast and for joining the Steem community.
Thank you. Thank you.